All right, so in this video, we're going to be looking at the background. So let's kind of talk about them. I want to do background 2. So ultimately, this is what we're going to end up having. We have different elements that we can use, and they're going to move at different rates, and this gives the impression that we have kind of like a 3D type environment. If all of them are moving the same direction, then we're giving the impression that we are moving in a linear line. But you could, and there's all kinds of videos showing it, where they wanted to make it look like they were running around something in a circle. They would have things counter move to give a different visual effect. Now, the way to make this work is that the farthest element in the back needs to move at the slowest rate. So some things you may end up having not move at all. So let me bring this over here so we can see this. Okay, so here's an example. There are 7 layers in this one. We have a moon that stays stationary, but there are multiple different background layers that are moving. And then we also have stuff that's in the foreground on this game that will move actually faster than the player. So it gives a different visual effect. So if we see the moon is not moving at all, we have a couple different tree layers. And then we have our foreground tree layer. We have our basically our road that we're standing on. And then we have our very far foreground element, which is the branches and the briar, whatever you want to call that. Okay, so we are trying to give this effect. We also have the stars. You see the stars; those are moving. They're moving much slower than the other layers. So that's basically what we're going to create. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to take these parts and we're going to break them up. So we have, say, this part is the very far background. And the only way that you guys can do this to stitch these is that the start needs to match up with the end. Because basically what we're going to do is we're going to draw from the X and Y position of this object and give it some speed so that it moves from the right to the left. And we'll draw another one that's stitched up right to the end of it that will follow it. So then once the full screen is replaced with the second image, then the first image will switch to stitch to the end of the second image. And they'll just keep alternating themselves back and forth. And you won't really notice the stitching as long as the start and the end are lined up and aligned with each other, and that we're correctly calculating. So here, that is a layer for the trees. So these will be moving. This will line up to here. And then we have, this looks more like our foreground layer. We have the shrubs that are going to guard this, and so they start and end will line up. Okay, so that's basically what we are creating. Let's go ahead and build it. We need to download. We don't need to download this one, but we're going to need to download these 3. So this one and this one. And we need to know what is front, middle, back. Okay, so this is front, this is middle, this is back. So when we're done, we will have this impression. The lighter image trees are farther in the back, like they are being kind of shadowed out. We have that fog of war going on. Okay, so to do that, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is going to be the one closest to us. We need to change the names of those so that we will make it easier to do that. We're also going to want to build some classes for the different background layers. BG layers. let's come here. I'm going to extract them. Yeah, so while we're doing this, make sure you guys extract. We're also going to have to create a class that's going to be basically able to do the layers. We could have a whole nother class that would manage the layers, or we could just do it directly in the sketch and just choose how we're doing those layers. There's a benefit of that, because if we added more layers in the sketch, then we could actually draw the enemies and the player in between those layers, which would make things easier. So let's go ahead and rename this. And let's just call this rear BG, mid BG, front BG. Simple enough. Let's come into here. I got this renamed. I got it as 3-5 Parallex working copy. And this will be working on here. So let's create a new folder. Backgrounds. And then we're going to load those files. All right. Okay. So inside my backgrounds, I'm going to create the class in here. Let's just call it background layer. .js. Okay. So in this layer, there's a couple things that we're going to need on here. But this is not actually, let's see, can we use the dynamic class? It's not really dynamic. This is going to be its own class. It's not going to be related to this in any way. Background layer. Okay, so what does the background layer have? Well, we need to have an image to build it. We could put an X and Y in there. I think that we could just start it off as 0, 0 and then build it as we go. The width and height, you probably want to pass that so it's at least the width and height of the screen. Let's make sure that we name that. I'm going to just call it BG width and then BG height. And then we're going to need to have a speed of that layer. That speed is going to be, how about we call it background rate. It's going to be a composite of this rate and the player's speed. So we want, if it's specifically all the way in the back, then it should maybe be 0 or very, very slow. So we could take what the player's speed is, and then we could maybe divide by that rate to get it to slow down. So if it was on the same level as the player, then it could move at a 1-for-1. So maybe we would take that speed and divide it by 1, and this, if it was all the way in the back, maybe we are dividing by like 0.02 or something like that. So it's a much slower rate. So we'll play around with that. Okay. We'll start our X out at 0. Let's just put a position vector in there. Position is going to be create vector 0, 0. Width and height, this dot width is going to be that BG width, this dot height. is going to be that BG height. This dot rate is equal to BG rate, and this dot image is the image. Okay. In terms of our constructor, that should be good. We might have to tweak some stuff. Okay. For updating, the update is just going to have us move our stuff. So really, we're just going to be doing this dot position dot x plus let's see, it'd be, how about we pass in this update, we'll pass in the player. Okay, subject, so that'd be the player's speed. Let's just double check. Player, and it'd be in dynamic creature. Speed. Yeah. So the player speed. Subject dot speed divided by this dot rate and we're not adding, we're going to subtract because we're moving it to the left. Okay, so if our player then technically goes into idle, yeah, so that should be fun. We could pass in if we wanted the rate to be 0, and then all we would have to do is just put this, how about if this dot rate equals 0, then we're doing something else. So if it's not 0, that would be my update. Otherwise, I don't care so much. Okay. Then we need to have maybe an update speed. So if our player moves faster, we should be able to update that rate. Okay. So maybe this would be better called as a rate, update rate. And so if the player is, if I'm giving them amount, we want to change this dot rate by that amount. So if we were speeding them up, we want to increase the rate. If we want it to slow down, then we're going to decrease the rate. Maybe this might just be better as just setting it. How about set rate instead of update? We'll be clear. This dot rate equals that amount. Okay, and then we need a display, and this is where all the work is. We're going to be displaying an image. I'm actually going to also change this from image to IMG just to make it more clear. Okay, when we are drawing this, we are going to use the image to draw the image that we passed in, one of them, by that X, or the X position. So this dot position dot X. So as that's moving, we're going to need to know the end of that. Yeah. And we'll be doing this dot position dot Y, this dot width this dot height. Okay. That is for one image. Now we need to know that position of what is behind. So if the x, this dot position dot x, if we are less than 0, then we need to have the other image drawn to the right of this one. Okay. So we actually never want this to be less than the width of the screen. So we are going to have to use some modulus in this. This is going to be a little bit weird. So this dot position dot x, we're going to take the modulus of the width of the screen. So that's our width that we built into the entire program. This is different than anything else that we've used. So this is all the way at the sketch. So if it's 400, it's going to be 400. So the idea of this is, if I'm starting at 0, okay, I'm going to be subtracting out by a certain amount. So if we start at 0 and we're subtracting out, so I should be dividing that by the width. If it, and this is just going to give me the remainder. So 0 modulus 400. 0 modulo 400 gives me 0. Okay. 20 modulo 400 would give me 20. When I get to 399, modulo 400 gives me 399. As soon as I get to 400, I'm back at 0. Okay, so I'm never going greater than or less than that number. So we're doing this. It's a little bit of modulus math. Okay, so then that means that we're staying from 0 to 400. It means we could shift to negative 400, but we're never going to be greater than that. So if our x is less than 0, then we should be able to draw this image. This is the image that we want on the right. We're going to want it this dot position dot x. I want a modulo that width plus the width of the screen. This is the second image. Okay, so I need to know this value right here, okay, is, and we could actually calculate it. This, let's just call it shift. Shift is equal to this dot position dot x with this. Okay, so I'm drawing this at shift. And then I'm drawing my second image at the width of the width of the screen plus the shift. Background width, background height. That's going to be the width of the screen, the height of the screen. Yeah. Okay. So this is going to be shift plus the width. We're going to do it this way. Shift plus the width of the canvas, and then we're at 0, because that's never going to change. This dot width, this dot height. Okay. This is where it's going to take a little bit of tweaking to make sure that we get it right. The display we're displaying one image. As that's moving across, we need to stitch the second image. So as this one moves all the way to the left, we're going to stitch the second image. Now, our other image, so if we're not doing that image to the right, then we should be doing this last image right here, which would be this whole thing minus. Okay, so let's step this through. If we're at positions 200, 200 modulo width would be 200. That's my x. Now, if the width of my canvas, or the width of my picture, is 400, so that means at 600 is where I should be stitching my next image, so as we're moving over. Okay, so if we're at 200, it is not less than 0, so I should be at 200, see, minus this dot width, 200 minus, that would be negative 400. Yeah, so this would be shifting over to the left. So this is basically the width over for my second image. So I'm seeing the tail end of this image while I'm still seeing this one. Once I get to negative 200 on this one, once I get to say minus 200 for this one, then this is going to be 200 plus that width. That should stitch it together. Okay, and if I'm not doing any math wrong, this is where we would be for it to keep them. And that's just because we're keeping it from getting too large, and we're just shifting this second image before or after it. This is the image, the whole image that's moving, and once we get below, then we shift it over. Okay, so we have created this layer. Now we need to go inside of our sketch. We're going to have to load those images, and then we're going to have to put them together. So let's go into our sketch. Background images. So let's call this let rear BG, let mid BG, let front BG. Okay, we're going to preload them. Guess we'll create a method for that. Load BG images. That doesn't really matter. Yeah. BG init. Okay. We'll do it here. Function load BG images. Okay. And I'm doing basically almost the same as what I'm doing here. I just need to load those images, and then I'm just going to pass those in as we need. Okay, so front BG is load image, backgrounds, bg.png, mid bg is load image, and rear bg is load image at backgrounds. PNG. Okay, so I'm loading those images. Now we want to do the background init. What do I call it? BG init. Can't remember how he spelled it. Okay, so in here, we're going to actually have to have a list of all of our backgrounds, and then we just got to choose the order of how we're doing them. So I'm going to create in here, we'll call it backgrounds. It's awesome that I keep getting notifications right now. Backgrounds, so then when we go to our init, we'll set that up. Backgrounds is a list. Okay. Backgrounds.push, new background layer. What do we need? An image, a width, a height, and a rate. Okay, so for this one, this would be our very rear one, and we need to make sure that it's properly working right now. We'll do rear BG, a background with a height and a rate. I'm going to do the width of the canvas, the height of the canvas, but we could have this where it's going actually off the screen. That's fine. Height of the canvas, and our rate, we'll say right now, is 0. So we push that on there, and then when we do our draw, which instead of us doing this, we're going to do a for of loop. Let back. We've got to be careful in calling background. Let BG of backgrounds BG dot update BG dot display. Let's run it. Reference area background layer. Oh, that was stupid. Index.html. Doesn't matter. Backgrounds / background layer.js. File save, load. Okay, there's our background. Now we want to see it move. Let's give it a rate. Hopefully it didn't break it. Let's see, 0.1. We don't know who the subject is because we got to pass that update in. So we're here. We pass the player in. Let's up that. Point 9. I do not see it moving. Width, height, 0.9. Okay, so now we gotta start kind of checking stuff. We should be here, console.log. Here, that should have ran. Okay, so we did get in there. The rate is not 0, it's not treating it as 0. The position.x should be updating. What is my subject speed? I think I got some math errors. Okay. Subject.speed. 5. This.rate. I think it's this. This is preventing us from having a 0 on this one. Let's just... It's locked at 0. Let me pause. I'll look into this error. Alright, it's something small. I forgot to put an equals here because I need to take the position and I need to subtract this from it, and then that's what's getting added. Now what we see here is the next image did not stitch over. So we got to make sure that that is working. We might have to tweak that a little bit. Now I had this as modulus with 3 run. Okay, that's stitching. Alright, so let's add the next ones. Now that's moving a lot faster, remember? So we actually don't want it to move that fast. We take our sketch, we're going to put this, let's say 1, so that it is moving a little bit. Now we're going to push our next layers. So this would be mid. And front. Okay, so this one could be, let's say, 0.4, and this could be 0.8. What? Front BG is not, what did I call it? All lowercase bg. consistent. Okay, so we are backwards. We need to go the other way on our math because it looks like we are moving the back much faster. So let's go ahead and tweak that because that looks silly. So this would be 0.8, this would be 0.4, this would be 0.1. That might even be a little bit too fast. Tweak this down. 6, 5. This will make this 0.9. Ooh, looking better. There is a little bit of a stitch line. I do see that. You could offset it a little bit. For the most part, you're not going to see it that much. You could add another image and you could do it. I think it's just a rounding error. Now, a lot of those, though, just having more components on there where they're all at a different rate, you won't notice them as much. Part of this is because we started it at 0, 0 for all of them. We could try stitching that so that that's not always happening at that spot. You guys can play around with that. But that gives us the impression that we are running. Okay. That finishes the background layer. That's really all that we needed to do. The next one, we're going to have one more video that's going to go over just adding some sound effects. So we'll just add it for when he's jumping, when he gets hit, and the shuriken, and then we'll add maybe some death sounds. I am going to quickly, though, tweak. The platforms aren't resetting where they're supposed to, and I still see the sensors. And I don't think we need to see the sensors anymore. We're done with collisions. So, dynamic sensor.display gets commented out. And then our platforms, when we created them, and they got reset. They should get reset off the screen. So here. At some random distance. So let's do width plus random, and we'll do 0 to the width. And we'll do this after we reset the length so that it will be fully random. There we go. All right, that's it for this video. Good luck. Have fun.